Now, mentor text, that's not just for the beginning of the essay. How else is it used throughout?
You're exactly right. In this particular unit of study of narrative text, we analyzed mentor text to see what happened in the middle as well. And my students were very adept at picking up on that's where the author sequences events. And then we used mentor text as well to analyze endings. How do
Okay.
you tie it up in a box with a pretty bow?
So all of the key sections
Exactly.
of the writing.
Exactly.
So moving on to conferencing.
Yes.
How do you use conferencing in the process of teaching students writing?
Okay. I think it's imperative to allow conferencing and assessment to drive the instruction. So I address that in a couple of different ways. I've been teaching many lessons throughout as we're drafting based on what the standards show
Right.
that this age group needs and based on what I'm seeing that they need. And then I generate a checklist for them to use with a partner. And so using this one as an example, one of the things it says is I have drawn a box around the first word of each sentence to make sure my sentences begin differently. I have changed any beginnings that are the same. So they're going to get together with a partner and check for that. And then
So the first three are really about not necessarily just grammar, but they're really sort of usage.
right, they're kind of
And
more
style.
about the craft of
They're more
writing.
about, yeah,
Right.
craft of writing and style, and making
Right.
sure that the writing has variety of sentences.
Right.
And those things. And then what's the second part of it?
And then the second part is more editing.
Okay.
We call it CUPS, C standing for capitalization, U for usage, P for punctuation, and S for spelling.
Okay.
It's important that they understand that revision and editing are two totally separate
Right.
things.
So you're not necessarily teaching them grammar and usage in isolation.
No.
You're teaching it in the context of writing.
Exactly. So, for example, when we were learning to begin our sentences differently, obviously this is narrative writing, so the students may have starred in their narrative piece, or if it was made up, a fiction piece, then there was another character that starred. And so it was an opportunity for us to learn how to use pronouns. So there was a mini lesson on pronouns
Okay.
that went along with that.
And then, now I heard you say you're able to see what they're doing well and what they're not doing well, and use that to determine what your other mini lessons are. So you know
That's right.
You know in the beginning you have certain ones that you have to do,
Right.
because you just know that's part of the key part of the curriculum.
Right.
But there's other things that students might not have gotten before now that they're supposed to get, or that they missed when you taught it.
Right. Or even some children who might need extension.
Right.
If they're proficient in the
Okay.
second grade standards, what can I do to enrich, for them? How can I go above and beyond for them?
So how are you determining that?
So after my students have partner revised and edited, then I conference with every child individually. I have a checklist that I use. So I'm looking for which students have been successful in these skills that I've decided to isolate
Okay.
for this particular unit. Obviously, if I come up with an area where there are a lot of checks, so for example, different beginnings, I can see that we needed another mini lesson on that. I needed to teach that a different way to help them become successful in that area.
What's interesting is in both the mentoring and the peer editing and even the conferencing, you've really focused what you want the students to learn. And everything you do is within that focus. So it's not sort of a million different standards. Because in the ELA, there's a lot of standards at play
Right.
at any one time.
Right.
Because you're reading and writing, you have to do all these different things. But it seems like you've able to sort of focus your energy on
Right.
the key things
Right.
you want them to know.
Well, as teachers, we know it's much easier to assess a specific skill.
Exactly.
And so if I can decide which skills I'm going to isolate for this piece of writing,
Right.
I feel like my students are going to be more successful applying it,
Yes.
and I'm going to get a clearer picture of whether or not they're successful on that skill.
And something like this, is really classic data-driven instruction. You're getting immediate feedback,
Right.
and then you can immediately provide them feedback and provide them another way of representing the information,
Right.
so that these students get this, perhaps these students get this, or the whole group gets what the whole group needs.
Right.
So that's a really efficient a way to do some, I think, important work.
Thank you.
So in our next section, we're going to talk about how you get your students to publish work using all kinds of different digital tools.